Hey everyone, welcome. Just to check,
Hello.
my audio is there and also my video is there.
Yes, works
Yes.
great.
Awesome. Technology works. One of those few moments. So, super exciting times. We still have people joining. So, I think for the first minute, it's going to be still a bit of a change here, but I thought let's start in time. And first of all, thank you all for joining. It's amazing how many of you have signed up for this launch, and yeah, looking forward to a great session here. Let's get started here, and hopefully technology will work. So before I jump into the actual agenda and go into the topic, there are some, I would say, uh, hygienes that we need to go through. So let me just start with the hygiene stuff. So first of all, meeting rules. Um, these are especially important because I'm a one-man show. So in terms of navigating Zoom, navigating the team, if it becomes a bit of a difficulty if I need to work on all of these as well. But so please stay on mute unless you're speaking. Raise your hands to ask questions. If for a long time your hand's been up and I didn't notice, then please let me know. So it can happen that I will miss it. So then you can speak up. Of course, engage respectfully in chat, keep contributions concise and on the topic, and be open to learning and sharing ideas. So I think those are the general rules that we are playing by. And then if we move on, I prepared a couple of polls just to understand who are in the call. So I would say let's start with our first poll. This is a very simple poll, and hopefully you can see the question. The question is, where are you from? So we have a nice spread. I mean, as expected, it's more the Americas and Europe who's awake at the moment, but we have three people from Asia. So welcome, and it must be an ungodly hour for you. Um, so I appreciate you joining. Thank you. And then moving on, I also have a different type of question here. We are going to have a couple of chat questions as we go, and the rules of the chat question, so it works, is please listen for the question, then think for a moment, write your answer, but do not press enter. So, and by the way, you need to look for the chat. So you should find the chat button, and there we will look at the responses. And when I say now, then please submit your answer, and then this can be a bit of an interactive way of initiating the chat or answering. So I'm going to have two questions here. The first question is more of a how are you? So what mindset or energy have you brought with you today? Think for a moment. Are you feeling curious, energized, reflective, maybe something else? Type your answer in 3, 4 words. Wait, and then let's wait a little so you can think about your answer. And now let's see the answer. So, feeling curious. Okay, what anticipation, energized, curious? Uh, Unsure, curious, nervous, excited, interested, and excited to learn, enthusiastic, optimistic. This is a very positive crowd. I feel curious, on the lookout. I'm excited about the possibilities, interested in the future of technology for knowledge management, very curious, excited, nervous. Well, for sure, I can definitely align with the word nervous. So I did quite some preparations for this, but live events can go many ways. So I appreciate your answers here. Now for a second poll question with the same rules. So think about the answer and when I say now, then submit. So the other question is, if nothing held you back, I mean, you had unlimited skill, time, money, and a dream team, what PKM tool or automation would you create? Invisible software, automatic note-taking, or New England Journal of Medicine. Yeah, that's cool. Teacher assistance for subjects, a network PKM tool, voice input PKM, visual navigation insert 3D space. Yeah, that would be super cool. An all-encompassing map of creating story, screenwriting. I can imagine that. A tool to help leverage my learning in more streamlined manner. AI organizer. Yeah, some thoughts organizer, connect images to PKM and create image occlusion. Yeah, that's actually a nice scripting opportunity as well in Excalibur. So that's great. Thank you. So then to look at our the minority style dashboard as a second answer there, just spotted it. That's also pretty cool. So in terms of our agenda today, I'm going to do a little bit of an intro just to know for everyone to know who you're listening to, though I assume that you know me from my YouTube videos, but just in case. Then I want to spend a little time on explaining what my vision for the Techno-Visual PKM community is. Then the reason for discussion today is the downloader Vault. So I thought I would show you a quick walkthrough, and then we can do a bit of minor tweaks. I have two ideas in mind that we can tweak, but I think that would be a Q&A part as well, where we can chat about how to do it and what to do, or what you've bumped into as challenges. Then I've asked Nadav so we had a chat with Nadav about his learning journey into scripting. And for me, this is an important point, because what I want to highlight is that I'm not looking for a community of black belt programmers. I'm looking for a community who likes to use technology, who's interested in PKM, in visuals, and in blending all that together, but we can come from many different angles. So that's there. Then we would have a Q&A with Nadav, and around maybe a bit of around how to learn scripting and where to go. Then I would share two debugging tricks. I was thinking of what to share, but I thought that this is actually one of the most powerful parts of tinkering with PKM tools, is the ability to find where it doesn't work, because it never works the first time, or rarely. And you can generate beautiful scripts with Chat GPT, which almost work, but then you need to find that part, the almost. So we're going to talk about that. Then I'm going to share with you my ideas around how the community would work from a pricing and onboarding perspective. And then at the end, depending on energy level, we can continue on with more of an open space collaboration, Q&A, scripting, whatever. So that's going to be the part where you can take the discussion where you want it to. So in terms of intro, I'm not going to go through all these things here. Just wanted to put this out there. I selected these 12 videos that I thought gives you a bit of my hope is to communicate two things here. One is in terms of Techno-Visual PKM, I'm not talking theory. I'm fully hands-on. I'm doing this. This is my passion. This is what I love doing. And in this sense, I built the Excalibur plugin for Obsidian. I built the Excalibrain plugin. I created a whole bunch of scripts. Some of them I put up here. I used the Shade Master. I love the Shade Master. Well, I mean, all the scripts I love because I built them to scratch my own itch. I used it in this video as well to color all the icons to match this background color. I mean, for me, that's a fun use case. But the presentation script we are using right now, so that is what's transitioning the slides here. And we're going to be talking about the AI mentor. So I love this part. And also I have a couple of videos here about hands-on scripting sessions. So I also published a page on the wiki. Maybe I can show you that. I didn't plan that, but let me just quickly show you that if you're looking for my scripting videos, so this is the Excalibur Obsidian online page. And here under wiki, if you scroll down to video transcripts, then there you will find my scripting and automation index. So I created this index today as a new index, and here you can see a list of videos that are hands-on scripting in Obsidian type of videos. So if you want to dive into this topic, then that's definitely an option. And I can also just drop this link here in the chat. So you have that available if you want. But so that's my intro in terms of who I am and why I think you should trust me on this. So this is my passion. I've been doing this, and I also love helping and coaching others on the subject. So I think I'm definitely there. But then the question is, what is the Techno-Visual PKM community? So I've been talking about it. What exactly do I mean? And here I want to again just so I shared a, a Microsoft Forms questionnaire up front, but I thought there were 3 questions I would ask here very quickly, just so that we all in the call have an understanding of who's around here. So my first question is, what's your skill level when it comes to scripting? So I'm going to enter the poll now, and let me share the results. So we have a nice spread here. We have actually 20% beginners. There's a strong middle, almost half of the group who's comfortable with editing scripts, but not really working from scratch. And then we have another, I would say 30% who's intermediate or professional in the area. So that's an interesting spread there. Now, the second question I wanted to quickly ask is, select a single thing. What attracts you most in Techno-Visual PKM? So in terms of this, so I'm ending the poll now and I'm sharing the results. So there's a general desire to learn scripting. I think there's a significant portion interested in visual thinking and PKM, and a couple of people just looking for a fun and creative community. And luckily, everyone is interested. That's good. I'm glad you're here. You chose the right place for being in a fun environment. And then the final question I wanted to ask here was, out of these technologies, what's the top 3 that you're interested in? And then hopefully there's going to be a rank in the interests. I think this is good. So we are now above 80% response. I'm going to end the poll and share the results, and let's try to make sense of the results. So I think the winner here is Excalibur Automate. That's good because that's where I can offer you the most help. Then the second one is Templator, which is also excellent. That's my go-to for automation for sure. Templator I use on a daily basis. AI for Templator, not a surprise because that's the basis of the use case that maybe drew you here. But I'm also a super fan of PFD Hacker's work. And then we have Excalibur Power User skills that I can definitely offer. Data view is something I can find my way in. Frankly, I use not that much data view in my own vault, but happy to help. And I have some approaches around that as well. And yeah, the rest as well. Obsidian API is an interesting one. As you will see, when I work with Templator, instead of the Templator modules, I like to use the Obsidian API directly. So I'm using Templator as the framework to run the script, but then I use the Obsidian API. For me, that's just a cleaner approach. And then we have a couple of people who have the desire to build plugins. So that's awesome. So in terms of what my idea is I'm looking for a community of PKM enthusiasts. So people who like to tinker and automate and want more from their PKM. And I'm thinking from beginners to advanced users, and I'm looking for a community where it is really a sharing between us. That was one reason I asked Nadav to share his experience as well, that I definitely don't want this to be a one-way journey of me sharing my experience. I also want to learn, and I think um, a community is fun when there's exchange of ideas. And for me, the other point here is there's a sometimes negative connotation with tinkering with your PKM. So some people say that you shouldn't be tinkering with it. You should be taking notes, and then it's going to be that's the way to use the tool. And frankly, I disagree. So for me, PKM is my playground. I believe that you're creative and effective when you're playing. I seriously don't believe in task management, in all of the business like target setting and goals. Of course, you need to have targets, you need the seriousness, but I think if you're honest, you're always the most productive when you're having fun and playing. And for me, tinkering with PKM is part of having fun with the tool. And the more I'm around my tool, the more I'm going to drive value from it. So I'm taking notes, I'm creating illustrations, I tinker with creating images like the one here because I enjoy doing that and I enjoy uh, automating as well. And I'm looking for a community where people, in that sense, are like-minded. Of course, they're interested in PKM, and I think I have a world-class system of my own in terms of connectivity and findability and quality. But at the same time, I enjoy the tool in many other aspects as well. So I'm looking for an amazing community. And so what are some of the properties of this community that I had in mind as I was thinking about this? So for sure, I wanted this to feel exclusive, but at the same time be affordable. I'm looking for a space for innovation. And in terms of innovation, I'm not only thinking of large scale innovation, I'm thinking of this could be the incubator for new scripts that get in the script library, new features that we do, like when we had a pilot session back at the end of November we created, I think, a very useful script for layering your drawings, and that could actually be taken forward. But I see this community as that space where we can co-innovate new scripts or plug-in functionality. I want to empower this do-it-yourself PKM approach. I definitely want a community that's there for skill building, that's supportive and supports collaboration, where you have novice to pro working together. Of course, we want practical outcomes. So in that sense, I'm going to be looking for use cases that we can work on, because I think that's the only way to program, inspired by visual thinking. So in many aspects, I will try to bring in the visuals. I'm going to work on providing curated content. So for example, one of the things that I want to do is to invite in plugin developers, maybe use some of my relationships to invite in some of the Obsidian devs and developers and others. So we have a bit of a color in the community with external input as well. And I want this to be global and inclusive. And part of that is depending on how many people from the East time zone join. I'm also happy to host dedicated sessions that are more time zone friendly towards the East. But so here's the content of how I see this. So initially the focus is on Obsidian, but I think as time goes on, I hope this community will survive for a longer period, and I imagine things will happen after Obsidian. In terms of the tools, this is in line with your feedback. I created a community in Discord. I'm going to show it to you later on, and I see that as the hub. We will have Zoom interactive bi-weekly sessions that will be recorded. There you can see the guests. I can't promise, but I'll definitely ask. We will have a shared private repository of scripts and examples, and we are going to work based on a prioritized backlog, because of course that's the question, what problem do we work on? Well, I think that will have to be an agreed backlog of ideas. So I think now we have a moment again to reflect. So again, wait with your answer in the chat. But so my question is, out of all of this, what excites you most about being part of a community like this? Is it the chance to learn new skills, collaborate with others, build something unique, or of course anything else? So based on the previous, what's the most exciting for you? So let's wait a little. Okay, so let's see the answers then. I see some of them have started to come in anyway. So building something unique, the chance to learn new skills. Yeah, I think new skills appear here. Many supportive community, motivation to do the hard work of quality PKM. Yeah, I think deeper understanding, AI integration, community of scholars. Yes, taking in more information at a faster rate, fresh ideas, motivation again, learning new skill, finding the community when needed, learn, collaborate, to be able to learn new skills, innovate. Yeah, I think there's definitely a clear theme here about a supportive community and learning and inspiration. I think those are the, if I would do a word cloud, probably those would be the words that come out at the top. So I think that was the intro, and I would say let's now jump into the downloader vault. I'm going to give you a bit of a walk through a bit maybe more on the scripting side, because my video didn't touch on that, so that you can understand a bit more about that. And then I'm going to do two minor tweaks, and then we'll stop for a Q&A, and you can raise your hand and ask questions. So hopefully then it's going to be interesting and interactive as well. So let me open the demo vault. Yeah, so this is the demo vault, and let me just try to open this here. So this is largely the one I shared. Maybe I've changed some, but we have the data here, we have the index, we have the quarterly files and the details, and we have the two files here, fetch video and generate a markdown note. In terms of the fetch video script, maybe let's start with some of the structural things that you can find in both of the scripts, and then we can go bit deeper that you understand what's happening in the script, but I'll rather leave it to a question and answer that we can direct discussion to where you have questions instead of me talking. But just to start off, these are templater scripts. Templater has and let's maybe try to zoom in a bit more that you can definitely see. So every templater script starts with this sequence of characters. If you don't have the asterisks, then it's still a templater code, but then it doesn't expect to see a multi-line script there. Now, my approach is to do the following, that I start my script with a comment and close it here, and there in between. So this is from a JavaScript perspective. You see, this is the closing comment and this is the opening comment. This is a commented section. What I have in the comment in this case is this script generates the data.json or data file here. So if I open this for a second, so you know that when the script downloads from YouTube, it creates this data file. And this data file has a structure, and what I have here is a definition of what that structure is. This is not used by the script. I just noted it down for myself that I remember, because I'm using this structure in the other script as well. And it's easy to get lost in script if you don't note these down. I noted this down because I created the script, and then 2 days later I came back to the script, and of course I already didn't remember. So then I realized that no, I need to take notes. And of course, if there's a script, you come back a year later, you definitely need to have notes. For the fetch video data, we are using the free Google API, but that requires a key. So you need to insert your key here. I have a long description here. I'm not going to go through here step by step how to achieve that. Then you will see my script logic is the following. Yeah, so this is the YouTube API key, not the Google API key. Probably yes, though I think I do get this from the Google Cloud console. So they have a daunting number of APIs. So if you look at the list, I don't think I'm exaggerating, but it's in the range of hundreds. But you look for YouTube API, the search will bring it up, and it's on the Google Cloud console. There you get this. So I have a bit of error handling here, and in the beginning, and every time when there's an error, I like to use this new notice. That's an Obsidian command. I have here on the right-hand side, I have the developer console open. And if I write new notice hi, then you see hi appeared. So that, and immediately you can see here two things. First of all, that in the developer console, you can real-time test out things. How do you get to the developer console? That's Control plus Shift I or Command plus Option I, and then this console pops up. In the latest Obsidian version, unfortunately, the color theme, the background color of the console doesn't follow your browser settings, but the foreground color does. So That means that every time you open the console, you need to come here to console settings, not console setting, console settings here at the top, and you need to choose the theme that you want, and then you close it, then it will be good. We'll see why that's useful, but that's just fortunately a quirk of the new Electron engine under Obsidian. But so I start with a quick error test, and that's usually in all my scripts. There are some conditions. If they are not met, then I shouldn't run the script. And then in terms of the structure, what you will see here is I have functions. I structure the script such that I place everything in their own function. So these are one by one. You can see that I'm defining functions that I'm going to call. So you can see here all the way there are, and we're not going to go through all of them. I'll point out a few things here, but what I want to show you is here I had 4 functions that we looked at. And then in the end, I start the script by calling the first function that I want to run, show YouTube data downloader model TP. Why is this good? And here comes a debugging trick. So often it happens that you have a templater script, but it doesn't run because you try to run the script, and even before the script could run, you run into an error, and maybe you run into an error. So I'm going to do a deliberate problem here. I'm going to delete this opening braces, right? So if I delete that and I try to run the script, so I'm going to try to run fetch video, parsing error, and syntax error, unexpected token const. Now that doesn't help you much, because then you can start to look through the code, and it is extremely frustrating trying to hunt down. So you know, you have this script and you have no idea where you did that because you were typing in it for maybe 20 minutes. Where the heck is that thing missing? How do you find it? The reason I put this into functions is the following, because now I can come to the end here, and I'm not going to select the last function that actually starts the execution. I'm just going to select the code that are the functions. So this is the heart of the code. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard. So just simply copy. I'm heading over to developer console. I'm pasting it. And then I'm going to press enter. And there you go. It says unexpected syntax, unexpected token and const. That's so far so good. But when I press here on this link, that will actually take me in the code to the problem where it occurred. So it takes me here. And now, of course, I can start to look at this and very quickly realize that, of course, I'm missing the piece above. So the braces in the previous line. But the good thing, maybe they could be a bit, if I deleted this one here, for example, or maybe I missed this bracket there, the closing bracket in the code, you know, we can play exactly the same. I just want to show you how effectively this takes me to the point where the error is, because again, I can just select my code like this, copy it, paste it, and it's going to tell me that the syntax is unexpected token at line 17. I click on line 17, and it takes me exactly where the bracket is missing. Hopefully you can see that it's spot on. And then it's very easy to find the error. I just search for it and I can correct this. So I think that's the reason why the structure is like this. If the structure were not in this function, if I would just start to, I can very clearly write a script that just goes step by step and does its job. And many of my earlier scripts do this. And that's a bad practice, because then this copy paste to the testability and error finding using developer console is much harder. This way you get that benefit. But so that was one thing I wanted to show you regarding this script. Other than that, I think the other bit, if we look at so I'm going to leave this here. Maybe one more thing to show you that I didn't come up with this script just by myself. So I have here my Chat GPT chat. I have here, this was my conversation to create this script. And you will see here, it's a long conversation, but for, yeah, so this is maybe an earlier part, because I also had to download the release notes from GitHub. So here's my write the JavaScript code that downloads all the release notes from the very first release until whatever. It should return a dictionary object with release tags, etc. So it creates me a script, but it uses a package that I didn't want. And so at this point, I respond that instead of using the package, use Obsidian MD request URL function instead of Axios. And I pasted it in here. And again, this is a practical trick I use, that whenever I want GPT to follow a specific logic, then I copy paste in the relevant part. So where did I find this? This code here, I found on the Obsidian API. So that's my typical search. I go to type definitions for latest Obsidian API. I come here to Obsidian DTS and search for request URL, and then I just simply copy pasted this part from here. Again, I don't want to go into the details of what I'm doing here. I rather want to give you the mindset of how I'm developing this code, because I think we can then use other opportunities to go in the details and go based on your questions. But the basic idea here is I take some examples and I guide GPT with that, and then I provided this function definition. Then I got back eventually in a couple of rounds the code that I think is largely the one that we see. So we can look at parse transcript. Probably that's still there. Transcript. There you go. So parse. So that's the function that we just saw in GPT. Slightly the discussion went on and I also modified it. But so this is the sort of collaboration I do with GPT in creating this code. I'm just thinking maybe let's do it slightly different than I promised. So maybe let's stop here and see if there's a bit of Q&A before I run off and I lose you completely, because I can see a risk for that. So maybe let's just pause and see if there are any questions. If you raise your hand, hopefully I'll notice that, and then you should be able to unmute and ask or comment. So have I used the script so far is the question. So I'm reading here chat. So what have you used this so far? Any hobbies like fishing or anything like this? So I actually used the script now for my son, and I already immediately ran into an issue with that. So he's into mathematics and he wanted me, or as we were talking about it, he was interested in downloading Michael Penn. He's a YouTuber who talks about mathematics. He has 2 channels. So we ended up downloading 700 or so video transcripts and then using it. Actually, NotebookLM didn't perform as well on the mathematics content as did on Xcolor. So I guess some topics go easier than others, but it was definitely a. So there's a question, would recordings and presentation be available after the meeting? Would be helpful. Yeah, so I'm going to be sharing this. I'm actually going to be uploading this to YouTube for access, but then in the community, I'm going to be uploading as an unlisted video, so it will be available for community members. Okay, so then I'm not seeing any questions. So I'm going to just mention one thing that came up also in, I don't know if it was on Discord or maybe it was in the YouTube comments, but someone mentioned that Obsidian, so the data.json file, or data, I call it data.json because it's JSON is the data format, but it's actually a data file. It's a pretty large markdown file, and in case of a larger set of data, it can be even bigger. And Obsidian Indexer has difficulty with this. Also, this really shouldn't be a markdown file. It has nothing to do with markdown. It will mess up your search. Of course, for that, that's one reason I recommended that you use this script in a separate vault and then you move the resulting files into your own because you don't want these sort of things in there. But what I wanted to show you is effectively we could have, instead of data.md, we could have created data.json. So if I change this, then two things happened. First of all, the file disappeared here from Obsidian, apparently. And second, I can get the file back. I'll show you in a second, but still the file is not going to be readable by Obsidian. So, but this is the correct file format for the data we have. This is the JSON file. If I would open this with, I don't know, a proper editor, then this is going to look like this. It will have the right color coding in terms of the data. So this has a format, and then with the right editor, it will come up like that. But so let's modify the script that instead of data.md, it creates data.json. This is a fairly simple change, but I think a practical change. And then let's do another one, and that is, how can we count how many videos we have in the data.json? That could be another interesting question. So we are going to do these two scripts, and then we're going to move on, I think, to Nadav's section that we don't spend too much time here. So first of all, how can I show the data.json that's here but not shown? If I click here on Obsidian settings, I need to come down to the files and links. And under files and links, I need to select detect all file extensions. And when I turn this on, then Obsidian is going to show you every file. So you can see here, data.json is right there. And I saw a hand up there, so I'll get to you, but the hand is now disappeared. So I couldn't read the name, just saw a hand. Yeah, Marshall. So maybe let's see if you want, if you can unmute and ask your question, then.
Hello, Zalt. How are you?
Yes. Hey, yes,
You
and
can
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. Yes.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for this presentation. It's very cool. I just wonder, I'm much more a beginner than the level that you're showing now, but I was wondering if it would be possible to tell us or show us how to combine all the files so we don't exceed the limit of NotebookLM of 50 sources, you know?
Yeah. So That we can also look at that. Happy to show you the part of the code that does this, but I think let's first now go after this data.json, and then I'll jump to that as well.
Thank you.
So in terms of data.json, we need to find the reference to data.md in our file, and it's going to be both in the fetch video data, and it's going to be in the generate markdown note files as well. So I'm just going to search for data, like I think like this, and let's just see. We don't have hopefully that many examples here. There you go. So the output data file, that's data, and that's good. So that's going to be data file output location. That's the variable we want. So here's, because here you can see I'm not giving it an extension. I just call it data, because then let's just see, because I already don't remember. So this is where I set up the question so that you can input that value. Come on, output location, get first link. Yeah, okay. So I think here I would need to modify here. So on this line, what's happening is I'm using the Obsidian API every time I'm writing app. That's the Obsidian API, and I'm using this function to get the first link to the destination. So this is the value of this will hold the. So when you run the script, let's run the script for a second. Oh, I don't have an API key, but no worries. So the value I enter here, and here I give the instruction without the .md extension. We should actually update that as well. That value, so that value will land here. So this was the question: output input data file location, specify the location without the, and we are going to write this JSON extension. And then when we use the output, that's where we need to add the extension. So we are just going to add .json like this. Come on. So I'm just here, wherever I'm going to search for this here, I'm going to replace .md with .json, because I'm changing the extension. And I think that's all we need to do. That's all. With this, we are actually done here. So maybe one thing we can do here is, no, this is how it should be. So we updated everywhere this script to take the JSON, and then if we come over to generate markdown note here as well, we want to, oops, sorry, it was the data file. That's the name of the variable. Yeah, by the way, another trick here, if you want to share data between multiple templater scripts or multiple runs of the same script, that's what I do, for example, in the slideshow script, but in the select singular elements script as well, that you run the script multiple times, it will remember data from the previous run. What I do is I create a variable on the window object. The window object is persisted across. So come here. Let's clean this. So the window object is where practically all the shared objects sit, and you will also find, for example, Excalibur Auto, not here because I don't have Excalibur Automate installed, but this is where these things sit. And so TMP, you can see that I already have the temp model data here, and that was from the previous run. I can see that this has already the data. The data file is right there. So that's all nice and available. And now if I come over to the other file, I'm going to look for this data file here. Data. Interestingly, why are we not input data? What's the, let's Alt E, generate markdown node. What's the output input data? Let's look for input data. Input data. It's input path is the name of the variable. I'm going to, oh, because this is actually not, because that should be data file, not data path. Very clearly, this is an error in the code, to be honest. So the one script didn't know what data the other did, so we can even update this. So that should be data file, and then it's going to be the same variable. And let's just see, the thing I want to do here is we're going to do the same. So when I look for the actual file, I'm going to add plus .json, and here, yeah, this is for nicety. This is just so it looks nice. I think that's all we need. And I think with that, I modified the script that every place is going to look for .json. But essentially, we can even try to run this. So generate markdown node, output data. Let's see if it will throw an error. Oh, haha. Let's just close this and restart. What's going on right now is it indeed ran. The problem is that I didn't set a date range because I have old videos that I didn't process, and one of the things, and you can see the console now defaulted in white, and when I type in window, then all the matches are white on white, which is super unreadable. So that's why, unfortunately, I need to switch here the theme, and now it's going to be good. So but that's an Electron issue. Hopefully in the next Electron update with Obsidian, it's going to be good. But so anyway, we did the change. Let me just show you one more little thing here, and again, I can imagine that if you're not familiar with scripting, that this was already too much. If you're familiar with scripting, hopefully you still took away some ideas in terms of how I'm approaching this. What I want to show you is how can I find out the length of how many items we have in the data.json. So we are going to do a simple if you know what you're doing. So I'm going to use the app metadata cache first. I'll get first link path to destination, and this is going to be output slash data JSON, and I think that's just like that. So what this line does is Obsidian has its internal file representation. They call it T file. You will not see it here, but I'm just writing it down. That's their object for files. And the metadata cache is the Obsidian index, and they have a function there to get the first file that matches this path. So here I could even write just data.json, and it should actually return the same file, because in Obsidian, you can set that you don't want to have long paths to the files, but only the short path. So this is their function to resolve that. And this returned a file. And any file operation I want to do, this is the file I need to use. So if I want to read this file, so I'm going to, this is my data equals app vault read file. And I'm going to type here await. So Obsidian has multiple modules or objects. So one was the metadata cache, that's the index. The other is the vault, that's the active vault that you have here. And then they have the workspace and some others as well. And in the vault, there's the function to read files. And to read a file, that's an asynchronous activity, which means that the environment will continue running on other programs because loading from disk is a slow operation. And for that reason, the entire application will not freeze until data is loaded. But in your script, you can say that that's great, but don't move to the next step before that has completed. And that's why I can use the keyword await. And in that case, I can make sure that before the next step is executed in my code, this has to happen. The environment will do its thing, so it's going to do other event handlers and whatever in the meantime, but my script is going to be on hold until it gets the data. And so if now I do this, then okay, so 7.3 megabytes of data was loaded. This is not yet very helpful. We have this big string. So now what I'm going to do is use one more function, and that's data.json. I'm creating a new variable here. Maybe let me clear this so it's at the top. So I'm going to create a new variable called data.json, and I'm going to use the JSON object that's available in JavaScript. So this is now just a JavaScript object. And what this object does is it can parse or encode a JSON object. So in this case, I'm just going to type in data.json equals JSON parse data. And here you can see that that long string was parsed into, and I can already see the response to my question. We have 253 videos in this file. And then each of the videos I can see is here with their data structure. And this data structure, by the way, is of course not big surprise. It's the same. So you can see video ID, link, title, published at, duration, thumbnail, etc. So that's the structure that I created, which I placed into a string. So when I'm saving this JSON, and you will see it here in the code, actually, that's just, here you go. This is what I was, so this is where I saved the file in the code. Again, I'm awaiting because saving or modifying a file is an asynchronous activity because it's a disk activity and it's going to take a long time. And I'm using, again, the JSON object, but instead of parsing, I'm stringifying it. I'm creating a long string out of it, and I'm providing it with the data, and I'm making it, these two at the end are just for beauty. So they format it such that it's a more readable file. So this is going to add 2 spaces as a tab as the structure evolves. So it actually, the file we create looks a little bit like this, that it has these sections. That's what it would work also without this part, but then it wouldn't be so nice looking. Yeah, so let me just see the questions. There are some questions here in the chat. Where is the best place to go to start learning about Obsidian Developer Console? Thinking, how does someone start with a Hello World program? Does that idea exist? Also, can you step through the code debug? I've used this Visual Studio. Yes. So we are going to look at the debug, but I think before that, and can you not create a counter for each video? Oops. To pull at the top of the, I have a response button here, and I just exactly don't see the word. Just pull at the top of JSON. You could create a counter, yes, absolutely. So you could number the videos for sure. And indeed, so the Obsidian Developer Console is the same console you would find in any other environment, but we're going to look at debugging in a second. I think we had Marshall, the question from you. So let me just show you in the data where I chop up the file, and so it's happening in the generate markdown node code, and practically what I do in the generate markdown node code is let's go to the bottom, because then we can follow. So I start with showing the model window. So that's the dialog window that I show. And then here I will have I should have a button here. Let's just look for button start. That's the one we want. And at the start, I close the window and I get the JSON file. I parse it, okay, and I just run GPT, okay. So that's the function. I go to run GPT, which is the actual query. But I'm just jumping all through this because this was not the question you had. But here, I created this separate file called, or function called create index, and that's where I do the chopping. And so here in create index, I'm doing the following. By the way, this is also GPT generated as the base, but of course, then I did a bit of formatting around it. But what I do here is I create this object that's going to be a simple list or array that I take in the data.json, and I redo. So we can actually run this because we already have the data.json there. Let's execute what this does. So I'm going to copy this code. We head over here. And the only thing we need to do is, it's not data, but it was data.json. That's how we called it. That's the variable that you remember. That's the one that we loaded. And if I now press enter, then group by year returns. Maybe I'm missing some data here. That data sort. Let's reduce. I wonder why that is missing. Data reduce, example. Details folder, that's not interested here. Push X. Frankly, I don't yet understand why. I have somewhere a none. What did I not initialize? Okay, so let's debug. I think that's what we can. Or maybe the issue is it's not sorted. Let's do the sort first. So I'm going to sort my data.json and then run this. And then let's see if that's still not good. These are folders, index file, those are not. No, then let's debug. But if anyone has an yeah, I just responding to Edward's comment in the chat. I one of the videos on the index page I share is my video to automatically create a daily illustration with Dolly, but frankly, it's a nice attempt, but automating this sort of creative process, yeah, I rather play with Midjourney. But what I'm going to do here is I'm adding this function here called debugger. And now when I run this process, then it's going to stop midway in execution. So debugger forces the run to stop. And now I can look at this. So let's see what happens. So do we get an, okay, the year is already not good. X date is, so data.json is here. And what's in data.json? Y floor X. Oh, the data.json is expected to have some different data. Okay, that's my stupidity. I was assuming the wrong, so I thought that this data was the same data, but no, it readFiles is a different function here, which goes in and retrieves all the already downloaded files and creates a list of those. Yeah, I would say let's pause here on this. I'm happy to go deeper into this, but I'm afraid that we're going to completely run out of time. Marshall, in terms of, well, if you join the community, I'm happy to jump deeper in on this with you. But else, we can also probably find a way. In terms of looking for where the magic happens, readFiles will look in the details folder and goes through each of them and do some pre-processing. This magic at the top is actually largely so the problem here was that I'm solving is the the format of markdowns I created with the mindset that I want to publish on the Excalibur Obsidian website. And so it had a structure. And then I realized that if I want to combine it for Notebook LM, then I need it slightly differently. And even more so, I first thought that I'm going to generate PDFs that will have the actual image of the video in there with the YouTube link. In the end, that is not required, but I didn't want to change the code. So this is why you have the thumbnail here. So some of this resembles a bit of the history, and I thought it's good enough, and I'm not going to simplify it further. But if I would be writing it now, I would probably leave out a good portion of this. Essentially, what this does is it goes through each of the files in this folder. So in the details folder, and it collects some data like the file. So that's the T file object in Obsidian, the title, the date, and the quarterly text. And at this point, this is where I concatenate the quarterly text is not, it's misleading. It's the video text, but it's formatted for the quarterly file. So it's this I'm going to have as many objects in the data, as many files I have in the details folder. And the quarterly text is not the quarterly text that will appear here. That's the other function that does it. The quarterly text is let's look at an example and then you'll understand. So if I look at Q1, and here's this video, then you can see that this one looks like this, that it has a title with a level 1 heading. It has a video link to the video. Then it has a thumbnail image. Then it has the remaining details that were already here, the link, the duration, the embedded YouTube, and then the summary. But if I come to details and we look for the same file, so turn your, or maybe that's easier like this. Turn. So if I come here, you can see that this file looks slightly different. So this file, so this is what's in the quarterly. You see it has this title, it has the link, and it has the thumbnail. None of it is here. This file starts at this point here, if you follow the bit. What I'm explaining is the whole logic that's happening here. So the logic that's here, it takes this version of the file that I generate when I'm running the GPT, and it adds an additional header. The only reason I'm doing this, because I could have upfront done it here in this script, is because as I publish to my website, I didn't want that text here, and therefore I had this additional logic that does a bit of stitching, but this is really unnecessary complexity if you look at it that way. But the quarterly text, just to be clear, is this version of the page that has this heading as well. And it also has some additional things like the heading levels are one level deeper. So you can see here, summary is at second level. And in this, summary is at the first level. So those stitching are the transformations I do here, but this is really just an outcome of my approach. All right, so I think let's now, also for you to make this more bearable, I would give Nadav the word for 10 minutes to share his journey in terms of how he's approaching learning scripting, and then we still have a small bit to go. I just want to give you my ideas on how I would price and start the community. So please stick around. And Nadav, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Zsolt. Yeah, it's nice to meet all of you. And this is actually my first time using the slideshow part of Excalibur, which I'm excited about. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so I guess before I start, a little bit just a background about myself, because I saw there were a lot of beginners. I'm very much a beginner. So my background is I studied literature. I worked as an actor. I'm a director in film and an editor of film. So in many ways, I'm the least, you know, coding type of person. Um, like I don't have any of that background. But when I started using basically about, so in my career, I worked in advertising on bigger budget projects, and there was a lot of support for projects. And about, there was engineers to call with technical issues, and a lot of the technical stuff was sort of, offsite. I would just focus on the creative stuff. But about 3 years ago, I ended up working on this documentary, and we had a very limited budget. And I was in a situation where essentially everything I relied on other people doing, I had to do myself. And at that point, I realized, there was a lot I could use as far as automation, because we didn't have really the budget to hire people to help us, and I was used to working with a much larger team. Um, so that kind of started me on this whole path of using, Chat GPT to create scripts to automate certain things in terms of edits. And a lot of it's like about information aggregation and sort of how you tag things. And like when you work on a documentary, you might have 600 hours of footage that then gets boiled down in an hour and a half. And so there's a whole process that's actually very akin to PKM, that sort of how do you deal with all this information, turn it into a story. Um, and so when I started, I used kind of what I call like a brute force method of using ChatGPT. I didn't know anything about scripting. I just basically started using spreadsheets in Google Sheet, and I realized that there was a way to put scripts in there, and then I would just tell ChatGPT what to do, and then it would just be like this very grueling process of trial and error. Um, and so along the way, I ended up finding out about Obsidian about a year ago, got really into this PKM stuff, loved all the videos I was seeing of Jolts, and ended up taking this, the visual thinking workshop. And so when Jolt had this initial, um, I think it was maybe in October, we had a initial sort of trial run of the Techno-Visual PKM. Um, I was both very excited and also kind of, a bit overwhelmed, because it felt like, wow, to really, the brute force method is okay, but I felt like I was wasting so much time, right? Like you're just basically relying on trial and error to like talk to GPT over, for hours trying to like fix things that if I just knew how things worked a bit better, I could probably diagnose them in a quicker way. Um, so that sort of started me on this thought process that I can start sharing here. And what I started to think about was, yeah, just how can I basically participate in this techno-visual PKM process when I'm a complete beginner. At that point, I didn't know what a function was, what a variable was, what is an API. None of these things were things I never knew. Um, and so I started thinking, well, kind of to give a big overview. So I was imagining, we're going to be doing, let's say I sign up for this for like a year. As we're doing this, I wanted to also continue to learn on my own. And the idea was that eventually, the kind of the end goal is getting to competence supported by API, by AI. So that was kind of like the goal is the idea is like, I'm not necessarily going to become an expert in this, but I want to have enough competence that using AI, I can build almost anything that I would like. And I feel like that's the exciting thing about, all these tools that are constantly continuing to develop further is like, I don't necessarily need to become an expert. There's certain like there's a certain sort of minimal amount of competence I need to have in order to be able to use these tools. Um, and so, yeah, so basically, this was kind of me in the first meeting. The first meeting. I'm sitting there and there's all this vocabulary, and I don't know, I sort of, some words seem familiar, but it sort of feels like this kind of giant gobbledygook of information. And then every once in a while, I sort of recognize a few words that somehow sound familiar. Um, and so so my next step was thinking about, basically how do I design a process for myself that allows me to like participate, but also continue learning on my own. And I started thinking about mid-career learning, and because I'm not going to go back to school and become a coder. I don't have time to do that. And so I started thinking a little bit about like what are the downsides, what are the things that are better about being in your mid-career when you're learning. And some of the things that are harder is you just have less time. It feels uncomfortable to be a beginner when you're an expert in other areas, and you haven't been in school for a long time. But then I also thought about the benefits, which is I feel like part of what you do have is just much better skills in terms of metacognition, meaning what I mean by that is like you have much better, you know yourself better, and you kind of are able to guide yourself better in terms of how you learn. And you also have a wealth of metaphors and analogies to hook your knowledge into. So I kind actually let me just hop ahead because I don't want to take up too much time. So basically what I would the kind of the visual diagram I ended up coming up with, and again, this was after taking the visual thinking workshop and thinking, how can we use these visual tools to kind of come up with good models for how we're gonna um, do things. And in this case, it was how do I learn? So I thought of it like, the getting to a place of competence is really about weaving a lot of different types of knowledge together. Um, and part of what I tried to figure out is like, how do I, have all those things going on, and that eventually what you have is that like, so let's say I learned some things as, my self-guided path up here. Um, so actually, let me step back a little bit and kind of give you like an overview of the whole thing of what. So basically, what I was thinking about is like, I'll be learning here on this path, and as I learn more and more, I'm getting closer to competence. And basically here also, like, there's things that I'll be learning as part of the workshop, and that really those things actually, the nice thing about doing both at the same time is things start to like ping off each other. So, certain concepts I learn, let's say in the self-guided path, is also going to then allow me to understand more of what's going on in the Techno-Visual PKM. And then it's kind of, you end up with a kind of braided process that is where you get to, having like a good solid foundation of knowledge. Um, and so here was kind of the things that the kind of the threads of the weaving. And the first one was conceptual knowledge, which is sort of, just like the big picture concepts, what are the bigger categories? What's the map of the whole knowledge that you're trying to learn? And the second idea was, how do I what can I hook into? Like what are the things that even if I don't know, like I'm not gonna be able to learn all of it at the same time, but if I can kind of hook into small things, then over time, like even today listening, I was recognizing more of the terms that you were using because there were things that I've started studying. And then I was thinking about, then at a certain point you also need to get into procedural knowledge, what do I mean by that is just like the practice, like when I was looking on forums about coding, a lot of them compared it to learning to play an instrument. It becomes something that becomes very automatic because you're practicing it a lot. Um, so um, so I just wanted to share with some of the tools that I ended up coming up with that kind of are tied to all this. Um, so the way I started breaking it down was, again, this is because I'm mid-career. I'm making a film right now. I don't, I have some chunks of time that are blocks of time, and then I have certain chunks of time where I might be like at the grocery store, or I might be, I have like, let's say 15 minutes to do something while I'm eating lunch. And so I wanted to develop a process of learning that really utilized both. And the idea being that you can, there's kind of two aspects. You have like the kind of more surface level learning, which is things like memorization and learning like small chunks of learning. And for that, what I found really helpful is using like spaced repetition. And so it's basically, you may have used flashcards as a student at certain points, but there's a really great program called Anki, which is a flashcard system. And it integrates really beautifully with Obsidian, and it's on your phone as well. And so what ends up happening is I enter like a lot of the vocabulary and new things that I learn into that. And so when I'm, let's say, waiting in line somewhere or on a lunch break, I'm able to continue to review the things that I'm learning on a regular basis. Um, and spaced repetition is really great for I think like creating scaffolding for deeper learning. So what I mean by that is it's like it's not very good for, really deeply understanding something, but in the beginning, like I didn't know what an object was, what a function was. So as I was learning those things, like finding, things like definitions, new vocabulary learning, those are things that are really good to use. Like spaced repetition is really good for. And then that allows me when I start to learn in a deeper way, I have a little bit of a foundation of scaffolding for what I'm learning. Um, so yeah, so basically kind of what I end up doing then is like in the last meeting that we had, I was just using like even today when we were just meeting, there was a lot I wasn't able to follow. Um, but what I've been just doing is writing down just being open-minded and curious and listening for words that I recognize. And then each time I come across a new term, I write down a question, I write it down and I write a question about it. And then I'll have a conversation with Chat GPT about it, which kind of helps clarify it for me. Um, and yeah, I'm always trying to celebrate the small progresses when you understand a little bit more. Um, and then, yeah, just to kind of jump ahead a little bit, the resources I've really enjoyed was there's a guy called Andy Harris, and he had a YouTube video called The 7 Big Ideas of Programming. And I found that was a very helpful kind of beginner, just bird's eye view, like a map of, of all the different like categories in programming and coding, what are functions, what are objects, what's aggregation, what are if-then statements. Um, so that was a really great one that I started with. Um, and then the other one that I've been doing is the Odin project, which is basically like a foundation course for JavaScript. Um, and yeah, I'm actually really curious to hear from the more advanced people. It may be overkill because it's a free course that's a foundation for learning web development. But it felt like there were so many things that overlapped with a lot of the stuff that we would be doing in Obsidian with scripting. For example, using command line interfaces, HTML, CSS, using GitHub, and then using text editors and Visual Studio Code, and then also some JavaScript. So I've been working through that course and found it really helpful. And basically what I'll do is I'll take things that I learned from this, and then that goes into my Anki flashcard system as well. I can share more if people are interested in kind of how I use that, how I use Obsidian to build that. And yeah, and then the other way, something I just did this week, based on Jolt sending some of some of the new functionality described with using yeah, like the Google Notebook, was basically I built like a GPT that was where I put in all the documentation, all the scripts into it. And so then, and I would basically ask it, okay, if I want to do more scripting, what are the top 10 functions I should learn how to use in order to, you know, in order to be able to script on my own. And that's just sort of a way to like focus it a bit so that, as I'm continuing to do the other studying I'm doing in the Odin project, I'm also able to like focus on understanding how certain functions work that are really relevant to specifically to Excalidraw and to scripting. I'm asking AI the same GPT about how the current scripts work that are all in there. Using custom GPT to create simple scripts which are small and they're easier to understand. And then I even went to that same GPT that had all the documentation and Excalidraw scripts. I also asked it what would be like a good path. What are some of the things I should learn to be able to to write my own scripts? And it actually came up with there's a markdown document, but essentially like it came up with a whole list, and that's also something I'm going to use. Yeah, so this is what I built on my own. I'd love to, there's a lot of experts in this group, people who are pretty advanced I can see from all the Discord conversations. So if other people have thoughts of, other resources that are really good for learning, and other areas, other ways to think about how to learn this stuff, I'm very much open to it. And I'm also open to sharing a little, sharing some of these things with other people if there's other beginners who would find it helpful. So yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. And just to confirm, I think the words I saw around Odin are all relevant. So I'm not familiar with the depth of the material, but for sure they are all pretty relevant. So, okay, let's see. Are there any questions to anyone wants to raise with Nadav? I love your funnel or braiding approach. I think that's such a neat way, and indeed, so I think a good community is a community that helps you develop as you develop yourself in the meantime. So it's this hand in glove approach, but that funnel is a really nice picture. How have you balanced the amount of structure you apply to personal learning? Excalibrain, for example, is extremely structured. Nadav?
I don't totally understand the question. You mean in terms of like using Excalibrain to structure my learning process? Is that what you mean, Aaron?
I'll unmute for just a second to answer that. Thank you. So just the Excalibrain I used as an example because it's so extremely structured. I've also heard other people in the community promote essentially no folder structures at all. And so you find your own way within your learning process to have the right amount of structure. And I've struggled with that. So I wanted to see what your solution was to the right sized amount of structure that you put around your learning process.
I see. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually kind of just starting to get into Excalibrain, so I haven't, and that's something I'm also really excited to explore in this community. So in terms of Excalibrain, I haven't really used it for structuring and I'm an ontology and that sort of thing. I Yeah, I guess to answer your question, I feel like I'm not using a lot of top-down structure in my learning. Part of the reason why is I think the mid-career aspect of it that I described, where, I really like to be fluid. So let's say I go for 4 days and I don't have time to do any deep learning and to sit down and watch videos. I can still be doing my flashcards and I can be having little conversations with Chat GPT about topics that are coming up in my mind. So yeah, so in general, I'm really relying, I guess, to some extent, the Odin project, has its own top-down structure. So I'm following their structure as I'm learning. But in terms of the other things that I'm doing, I'm kind of more in the bottom-up approach, I guess, for now. But maybe that changes as the knowledge gets bigger. I may want to organize it more. There's a question from Edward. How fast, since applying visual thinking, are you able to find solutions or at least find the resources that will help you solve whatever? Yeah, I think kind of immediately. I found yeah, I guess the way I would answer it is I think maybe that's the biggest takeaway is I feel like that's sort of why I was thinking about this grappling hook is, if you're waiting for being an expert in something, it can really slow you down. Whereas if you can like hook into small things that you can learn, I feel like the learning process can just continue on a daily basis. So I guess, to answer your question, I think like immediately, I think there's things that like even this diagram that I showed you, and it's still very rough, but I sketched it right after I'd taken the visual thinking workshop, and it was in really rough form, and I had barely, kind of learned even how to use the slideshow and stuff. But it really helped me like organize what the steps I needed to do to research, find out which JavaScript course to take. And I think I wouldn't have done that in the same way if I hadn't come up with that funnel image, So I think visual thinking kind of immediately gives you a way of thinking outside of your mind, which offers like a lot of great solutions and, paths to follow. So.
Okay, so I think I'm going to cut the discussion short here. We can, if people want to stay around at the end, we can have a bit of a conversation at the end. But for now, I think just mindful of time, let's complete the discussion. So in terms of the debugging trick, I actually showed that earlier. The only bit I didn't show, and I thought I would show, is the Discord I created, because that's where I would have picked up the debugging script from. For now, I created, of course, a welcome, a place for introductions, a section for general discussion, a backlog where we can create our backlog of items. And of course, in the first session, we're going to talk about how, but it's a pretty simple setup. So you can upvote topics, and when a topic was discussed, we can close it. And then there's a section for debugging tricks. And so this is the example I showed you. So finding compilation errors in templater, data view.js, etc. So this is actually the framework I showed you in terms of creating a script where you have a function. And so my idea is here I now place 3 debugging tricks so that it kickstarts a conversation. Of course, this is a starting community, so everything in that sense is empty, but the idea is we will fill it up. And you can also see here that I created this section on sessions. So my idea is for each session, we're going to have a topic. We can chat about the session beforehand if there are some points, and then this is where the recordings are going to pop up, and we're going to have an open space that anyone can jump on a call within the environment. So the sessions are going to be on Zoom, but if you want to catch up with someone and you don't have a space to do it, there's an open space here to do that. That's the initial piece. Based on what you were saying, Nadav, I thought that there's definitely one category that immediately jumps to mind, and that's resources. So learning resources, and I think I'm going to create a separate discussion for that. And then we can, of course, expand as the desires expand. So this is just to have an initial structure. And then, so I put together this is my offer in terms of the community. So what am I offering? So I'm offering a membership-based community that has bi-weekly sessions. In terms of my current thinking, I would put the sessions on a regular basis, Saturday evening this time, but I think that's, again, depending on people joining, that I'm happy to discuss. It's always difficult to find alignment, but based on the Microsoft Forms feedback, more of you said you want it on the weekend. Many wanted it in the evening, but of course that's mission impossible because we sit in different parts of the world. So that's a hard one. But so that's how I landed on this time. If I get over 5 members from the East time zone, I'm happy to, on alternating Saturdays, I'm happy to do a Europe morning, which, depending on where you are in the US, could be a very late evening, like the one now for the East. So that's, I guess, the idea here is for those in the time zone meaningful, they can join either or. But before I do this, I do need at least a couple of people who would join. So otherwise, it's not engaging enough. They would have shared resources indeed. So I showed you the private repository and also the guest speaker. So that's the basic idea. And then in terms of what I'm thinking of, and this is, I guess, the first number you want to look at. So my thought process is the following. I'm going to leave an option out there for 1 week. So that's until next week, Saturday. That's a founding member. And indeed, I'm thinking that the first session would actually happen Saturday evening next week. So that would be the first bi-weekly session now with the community. Essentially, the angel and the member are the same. The angel is different from the member in terms of contributing more. So I wanted to open this opportunity because it's a very fine balance. Frankly, if we are looking to create a sustainable community, unfortunately, it doesn't come without cost, and it has to be financially sustainable as well. So for now, we're starting with 1 year. The angel approach is anyone who is able to afford. I appreciate if you can step in with more, but I wanted to make it affordable for the rest. The founding members get a significant benefit, but I think also the regular price is, I didn't do my research, but $1 a day, I think even in price parity disadvantaged countries is in the range of a small, I mean, I can imagine that there are extremely poor countries where $1 goes a very long way, but I feel that $1 a day where I live doesn't get you half a coffee, maybe a third. So it is really not a huge amount. And I think you get a very valuable resource for learning and the community. So that's my approach. I wanted to make this approachable. You can see here the link. So it's the Visual Thinking Workshop link, and I'm going to activate this on the page as well, so you can find it. But it's the PKM, Techno-Visual PKM is the link, but I'm happy to put this here as well. So that's essentially the offer. And it is indeed mixed up. I can definitely see now the point. So yeah, that's all. And then as a final question for our chat before we close out for today, think about this, and I'd be interested to see your questions. So if you join, or assuming you join the community, even if you don't join it. I'm interested in your answer. What would be the first, or what will be the first project or skill or idea you want to tackle or explore together? So get familiar with the Obsidian API. I think that's indeed a very good starting point. Find out how to bring geospatial resources. Work on Excalibur automations. Yeah, we didn't look at that. One reason I created the script library was indeed to create a library of script examples. That's how it started. But then it grew into its script store as I realized that it can actually do more, but they are very good ways to learn. Yeah, ideas for more easily linking concepts in my knowledge graphs, incorporating AI agents. Yeah, AI comes a couple of times here. Scripting to automate some elements, but not yet able to fully articulate what I just need. Integration between Excalibur or Excalibrain, for example, is there a way to add icon into Excalibrain based on ontology? It's a nice one. Teaching each other sharing ideas. Absolutely. All right. So thank you for that. And I think I have a final poll before we come to our closeout. So I think indeed the last poll comes, which is just a simple question. So how was this call for you? And of course, in the chat offline and in any other way, I'm very happy to get feedback as well on how you would improve. I would consider this largely successful. I'm very much interested in what didn't work for you if you voted on a lower value. So either here or on any of the offline channels, I'm always open to learning. So I welcome your input. And I think that brings us to the end. Now, I'm happy to stick around for a little if anyone wants to chat, but in terms of the planned content, this is the content I had in mind. So I appreciate most of you sticking around. That's also a confirmation that it wasn't that awful. So, and I hope to see you in the community and then continue on with more regular calls, and I guess form really a community, goes through the storming, forming, norming, performing parts of the community as well. Thank you. And then if you have a question and you want to chat, just unmute and I'm happy to chat. If you feel that you're tired and want to leave, I can imagine. Yeah, go on.
The pricing model that you came up with, the after January 18th, that means that would be, you wouldn't pay that if you paid the initial founder's fee.
And even more so, one thing I didn't quite articulate here enough.
And then after the year, it would go to.
No. So that's the one that I did a poor job at articulating. So the founding member locks in your price for life, assuming the community is successful and we get to a break even in terms of sustainability. So that's something to achieve. Right now, the commitment is the year, but then you lock in this price, and those who join later, they get that price. So you will stay at your annual price of the member fee for however many years, hopefully many years, you stay with the community. So that's something I didn't articulate well. So thanks for the question.
So the founding price is a one-time price, no further payments after that.
No, it's a one-time price per year.
Ah, got it.
Yeah. So next year, if you sign up today, that's 2026 January 11th would be your next payment of 250, assuming that that's what you signed up for. But if you sign up on the 19th, then a year later, when the time comes, it's going to be 365 for the next year. So that.
And there's no benefits, angel versus member. What is the difference between those two?
The difference is your contribution to the sustainability of all of this. So I'm thinking that the value you get is immense in terms of access, either to my time, but to the community. And frankly, if I ever to advertise this only in North America, probably I would start more closer to the angel price for the community, but at least closer to the founding member would be somewhere around here, and then it would. So I think this is a in this sense, assuming a global market, a bit more reduced price. But I also understand that some people might have the means and see the value in this and want to support it. And so I wanted to offer that opportunity. But apart from feeling good and knowing that you're contributing to the sustainability of something you believe in, there is no significant other benefit. Okay, I see, Xuan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just had a quick question. I know we talked a lot about, the ability to develop new tools and to develop skills for developing plugins and things like that. But for me in particular, I'm mostly interested in how to improve my key PKM in general and strategies that people are using and things like that. Do you see that as a big component of this effort, or is it more focused on the kind of development of tools?
I missed your question. I was distracted here on the chat, and just the most important part of the question I missed.
Yeah, so I'll try to re-summarize that. I'm curious about the focus of this group on an ongoing basis. If it's going to be focused on mostly just the development of new tools and features, or if it is going to also be focused on how to better your PKM.
So I think for bettering your PKM, if that's your sole focus, the visual thinking workshop is targeted directly at that. But the visual thinking workshop, those who participated might disagree, what I consider not very technology deep, but it really touches the whole idea at the surface. We look at Excalibrain, but don't really go into how you would configure your ontology and how you would go deep in that. We look at scripts, but only at the high level. But if you want to better your PKM, the visual thinking workshop gives you a full tool set around that with a mindset of practices, etc. But this is called Techno-Visual PKM because, indeed, I think I'm looking for a community who's interested in advanced use of, for example, Excalibrain. How can you, the question there around add an icon based on ontology, or so how can you stretch the tools further? Those topics I'm definitely looking forward to talking about, and also how can you maybe take but yeah, so not sure if this is if you still have follow-up questions on this, so I don't want to ramble on. So Xuan.
No, I appreciate that. That's good feedback. I think I'm coming at it from a technical perspective. Like I have coding skills, but I don't necessarily have the PKM skills. But I am interested in some of the bleeding edge features as well, because it's just fun. Like you said, that kind of makes you more interested in it. So thank you for that feedback.
Tom had a question here. Tom, you want to see and I can see some questions as well, but you wanted to see the Discord page again, so I'll show this.
Not the Discord page, but the overview page that you had as to what would be part of this page right here. Yes.
This one.
Yeah, it was just, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
And I think here on the page, by the way, I have the founding members insert a special lifetime rate. So this is the question to earlier, and then I don't know Dan or Rolf, or actually I think Rolf is Marcus, but who was first? So please negotiate between yourself and them.
I'm pretty sure Rolf was first. So go ahead, Rolf.
Okay, thanks. I wanted to know if you have some conventions files that you always send when creating a script.
So I do. You mean sending a script to Chat GPT, I guess?
No,
Or...
it's more like some basic coding principles that you want when creating a script. So, for example, please always use types in that and that way, and so on. If you can follow what I mean.
So I don't have. I mean, I have a coding style in terms of how I name variables and what letter casing I use, how I format the code. So that definitely overarches. More recently, as I've showed you also in the example, I'm moving more towards having the script encapsulated into functions. So if you look at older scripts in the script library, so I'm now looking at Excalibur scripts here. If I look at older scripts, then you will, I mean, some of them are, of course, super simple. So this script right here is a very short script. So it's not in a function, but yeah, that could be something to improve. And most of the scripts, if not practically every script, starts with the following step that so this is such a hassle, that I have a drawing open, and I will just set view, and I'm going to start to experiment with the thing I want to do. So the scripts usually are born with me tinkering on a problem like this, or maybe if it's a file, then opening the file as I showed you, reading it and tinkering with it. So this is usually where the script is born. Yeah, but I'm not sure, Rolf, is the answer helping you, or?
Yeah, yes and no. The first part was that you encapsulated the functions, and the second part is that you have a specific naming convention for the functions. And I think I will start with these two conventions and move on further, because I program mostly with Ada, that it's a pair AI programmer that automatically Git edits the files and so I don't have to copy and paste everything. And there you can add specific files as conventions on how you want to be that the LLM codes certain stuff and follows these instructions. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Dan, moving on then to you.
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges is the AI tools that we're using today, that are available today, might not all be available tomorrow, right? Cool stuff like Notebook LM, OpenAI can change its model. I think we've all read the news stories that AI is not quite profitable for those companies yet. So is one of the challenges that the community is planning to tackle is maybe setting up backup plans and alternates for these technologies that we're ultimately going to rely on for our workflow.
It's a very interesting dilemma. So in my professional job when I'm not doing Xcolor and PKM and things like this. I'm the enterprise architect of a mid-sized regional oil and gas company. And my advocacy in our company as well, and that's my advocacy for ourselves as well, is of course, I can hire developers to start to develop machine learning and AI solutions. A year ago, we had a similar project. They are called RAGs. So what Notebook LM does is a RAG, which means I forgot the acronym, but the point is that a RAG will inform its answer and point to a corpus of text that you provided. So that's the work on a document. My advocacy is there's no way on earth that even, and this is an IT of 800 people and a company of 25,000 present in 40 countries. So it's a fairly large company compared to me as an individual doing PKM. And even in that company, my advocacy is don't go down that route. There's no chance that we are going to be able to develop as fast and as good solutions that appear on the market. And yes, it's a risk that the market changes extremely quickly. So this is, I think, a turbulent time. But frankly, I've resisted the temptation so far to build my own LLM. I did it back 2017. I actually built based on the word2vec approach, which is actually this word embedding is exactly the same. I indexed the full then available Gutenberg library and did my vector database. I created a fun little script for me. I called it Chat with God, which was I used this word2vec data and then I imported different sacred texts, and then you could ask a question and it pointed to an answer in the text. Anyway, so I played with it today. I think personally, I think I don't have the time to get on top of everything. So yes, I think there's a risk. These tools are likely going away, but there are going to be better tools instead. I think as with everything, when it's free, then you're the product. So I think, and that goes back, I think, to any effort, including the community as well, or anything else. If you want something valuable, unfortunately, that's always, you need to put some of your own value into that as well. But yeah, so my view then is, yeah, I understand things are going to change. I don't build these into my workflows as hard and fast components of the workflows. They are helping me as a utility on a specific topic. And I accept that it might go away, or it will definitely go away. But I think it's going to get better, or more powerful, maybe. Different vendor, but more powerful solutions. There's a strong competition.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, right? It's mitigated risk as we invest our time into some of these tools.
Yeah. Good. Nadav, you had your hand up, but then you got tired.
No,
the question is gone.
Well, I guess maybe this is actually tied to the question, which is just like how do you envision sort of the main interaction, right? Because I feel like we're gonna have, the weekly meetings, but I imagine that a lot of the, sort of technical things could also be communicated via some of the Git stuff you're setting up and also the Discord. And I guess, yeah, I'm just curious sort of how you envision the difference between the time spent in the meetings, talking through things, and then doing things kind of on our own, maybe in a more asynchronous way. So it's an open-ended question, but it was something I was thinking about.
Yeah, and frankly, I don't know. So my hope is we are able to develop. So let me put it in a negative way. There's no, it's not feasible. It's not going to happen that everyone's asking and I'm responding. That's not a community, and that I don't think it's valuable, and definitely not feasible. So I know what's not going to happen. What I hope is going to happen is naturally people will have different skills. There are going to be, I believe in projects. So I think, as Nadav, you mentioned in your presentation as well, that you start to use your knowledge to achieve something. So I think the trick is to find projects where we have shared passion for a small project, and then actually focus our energy around it, and maybe a couple of meetings and the session and the discussion in between is focused on getting that thing to work. There's a piece of workflow we want to work, and working on it. I think that sort of collaboration, if we have 1, 2, 3 shared projects that we work on at any time, then that could be fun. But no, I don't know the answer. I know what is not feasible.
And I have another question, I guess. And I'm sorry, some of these questions I think we can also have on Discord. But I guess the other thing it makes me think about is for the beginner cohort, part of the cohort, sort of what kind, because I think I would be worried about, I mean, I guess that would be the pull request, right? On Git would be like writing things that are not necessarily formatted the right way, or maybe not even working. I guess I'm also thinking about like, what are some ways you think that beginners who may not have as much experience might be able to contribute? That's something else I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I think they are all beginners, just at a different point in our journey beginning. So frankly, the learning I went through over the past, so I started the Xcoli draw plugin. Sure, I had 20 years back some experience, but I started with a strong will that I want to make this work, and there are a lot of things I now started to rework because now I have a bit more understanding how to make it more robust. And so I think there's a very broad range of skills how you can already create value, and I don't think it's so much tied to the skill as to the motivation and perseverance. So script, and I think that's the age-old um, recommendation that choose a hobby or choose a profession where you like, for the type of problems that you like to deal with, not for the assumed outcome it gives you. So say you envy rock stars because they are applauded by tens of thousands of people in an arena. That's not what you should be envying. You should be envying the endless road trips and the problems around it, the endless practice sessions, and all the issue, resolving all those problems, because that's the reality of it. And so that's my thinking of scripting as well. If you have the will and the perseverance and the vision of what you want to do, then I think skill comes very quickly, especially today with the GPTs. It's a huge help in terms of learning. And indeed, as you said, one of the there are many cool use cases you can do with GPTs, but you drop in a script and you ask it to explain it to you. And you can ask it deeper and deeper and deeper, and it will never get tired of you. It will nicely answer and explain, and by the end, you'll learn.
Thank you.
I had a question. You know, there obviously people of different skill levels. All of us, I think, in this group most likely have the skill of learning and being self-learners. Otherwise, I doubt you would be even venturing on this pathway. But you have an offering on your PKM workshop site that there's a fee that you can pay for an hour worth of time. Some of us, like myself, I think I'm a fast learner, but I'm really at the beginning of a journey. And you know, the fact that we have other day jobs, it would be helpful to know if there are other individuals that are in our community that are closer to our level that can take us at least the first rung of the ladder up. It's hard to approach a super expert like yourself and really take full advantage of that. And then once you get to the first rung, then you're going to need someone to get you to the second rung. Are there similar people within our community that we could use on a one-on-one basis, even if it's paid, that can kind of not overwhelm the beginners, but kind of be there to help us get over the fear and hurdles that an initial beginner, smart beginner, but still a beginner. How do we approach that so that we're interacting appropriately with the people that are closer but slightly above our own level? Is that a valid question?
Absolutely. By the way, every question is valid, so a question is a question. But I think it's also a very relevant and thoughtful question. And that was one reason I asked Nadav to share his journey in terms of learning. So I think that, for example, by creating a corner in the community there we can share resources could be a good approach in building that knowledge.
I think this is where Nadav would come in with his question, because he asked how he could contribute. And I think when Nadav, you do the things you learn into the wiki, we have automatically the step ladder approach that you are looking for.
And I guess makes me, can I actually jump off what Ralph said, Jill?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, because the wiki, from what I understand, the wiki is it's really focused on Excalidraw, right? As in all the functionality of it. I wonder whether there could be something similar where we could aggregate, I guess what you mentioned, like resources, but maybe even beyond resources also, like how-to videos and things like that that could be shared as part of the membership, perhaps. Maybe that's what you meant by resources. I'm not sure. But.
So one outcome could be out of all of this is eventually together we build up also. So for sure, going a bit, gathering my thoughts. So what I started now to do very deliberately with Excalidraw is I committed in myself that I will not respond directly to any question, but quickly write up my answer and publish it on the wiki and share the wiki link. Because with that, I start to build a knowledge base. And I think in terms of resources, that could actually be a very interesting approach, that if there's a question, putting together a 10-minute clip that is not nicely cut, but just a 10-minute clip that explains that point is really a quick thing. Or even recording a short discussion and then organizing it topically, and with that we can create a library of sort of small tutorials. I think that could be an interesting result of the community that would make it extremely valuable for people who join, because then there's this library in the PKM environment, in the Obsidian environment, with the tools that you use, that's hands-on practical. So yeah, that could be an outcome. Originally, a year ago, when I was thinking about this, I also put together an imagined curriculum. I thought that maybe this could be organized like the visual thinking workshop with some predetermined lessons, etc. But then I realized that I think as many as we are, we have different skill levels, different interests. So it's a very broad range of people you try to bring together. A book I read many years ago called The Dancing Woolly Masters. Maybe we can find it here. How does I'm not finding it. Maybe it's so long that I don't have a note. But the thing I like about the book is how it's every chapter is chapter one, or every chapter in the book is part one, chapter one. And the idea is that the martial art master always dances the same dance, and the apprentice learns from that dance always a different aspect. And so for me, that method of learning of it's kind of not of the model you showed, that it's the two parts bouncing off each other, so everyone does their own learning, but then you have a chance to talk about it, and as you talk about it, you ask questions, you learn, you pick up new pieces, and so it becomes this virtuous cycle of learning. Yeah. Anyway, I think
instead of having the syllabus that you were talking about, I think what I might appreciate is, as I take on the attempt to eat an elephant, some people have eaten smaller parts of the elephant before me and may have suggestions on what not to chew on first. So by that analogy, what I mean is maybe not have the entire syllabus, but at least have, rungs of the ladder that you would think step 1, step 2, step 3, at least to kind of, I mean, once you get to step 30, you're not going to need anyone's help, because you'll figure out what 31 is for you. And it's going to be very different for someone else that's at 30. But in the beginning, when you're overwhelmed with a daunting task of eating an elephant, it would be helpful to know that other people have done so without throwing up, and their method of getting past the initial few bites, so to speak.
Yeah, so reaching a critical mass in terms of knowledge that you can build on it is can be a challenge, but I think it's a dual challenge of finding bits of your workflow that you want to make better that are not yet the Millennium Falcon, but something smaller. So I think that there's always an opportunity to tweak something little instead of. So in this sense, the example we looked at today, but that was the video I put out. So I thought we should look at the AI script. That's not a good example because that's super difficult, complex, large script. But there are much simpler examples that already. So for example, one of the simpler scripts, just so that you have a visual on it as well, is I guess toggle tray mode, toggle menu. So this is a super useful script. I love this script. And it's already, because I've been using it, I complicated it somewhat. What this does is the following. I have a shortcut, Alt-A, that Alt-A, that will toggle the menu there. So if I want to open the properties and hide it, I don't need to move so I can get it, I can pull up the menu here and I can hide it, and I have this simple script to do this. This is already complicating it, because real simple is you just open it and hide it independent. Here I started to be clever that if I'm editing text, it should do something different. And so this was already using the script. Originally, the script was a one-liner in terms of getting the current state and then switching it back. I find it extremely useful. And this is how scripts usually happen, that I create something simple and useful, and then I can go on and do the next step and develop it. So I think this is the type of simple automations that you can think of, that, hey, wouldn't that be great if I could, I have another script for that toggles the width of the object on a scale, and then I can just simply press a button and step it up, and then it happens. The shade master, so this coloring script I recently released, that's a pretty complex one, but it started with the simple need of, I have an element here that has a background color of whatever, and I want to make this just a little bit lighter or darker. How can I do it? And the script is, by the way, still here, right here. So this will darken and lighten the background color. So that was the original thing. But then I had other scripts around this, and then I thought that, okay, so wouldn't it be nice if I had this approach where I can also change the hue, and I can change the saturation, make it gray, I can change the lightness or darkness. And wouldn't it be great if I could do this with SVGs as well? And then it grows and grows. But the original simple idea was, I want a script that I can just click a couple of times and the color is going to be lighter and darker. And so I think the reason I'm showing this is, I think you always need to start with the small, simple problem you want to solve, not the super complicated workflow. And these things build on one another as you use it. You gain skills, you gain understanding of how you're using the script, and then you can go to the next level with it. Okay. I think, gentlemen, let's call it a day. So we are now, I have no idea what time it is, but we had an additional 37 minutes of open space conversation, which to me shows that there is definitely interest in having a community. We still have 18 people around here, so that's, I think, quite an achievement after 3 hours of meeting. So I take that as a strong confirmation that there is interest. So I appreciate your time. I hope you sign up. If you have the means, I hope you sign up as an angel, but if you sign up as a member, that's also great. Or if you don't sign up, that's also great as well, but then you'll miss out on the community. And I hope to see you next week, Saturday, around the same start time. And then that's going to be our initial meeting, setting some of the ground rules and how we want to work together. Thank you.